The conversation surrounding religion, especially especially when it comes down to the internet, is something in which there has been a interesting trend over the years of a very confrontational slash divisive nature online. I'd argue that given it's online and you can actually hide your anonymity more online, that people who are scared of repercussions are more open to being more open about not being religious. Do you agree with that?
Hey y'all, my name's Mike and I'm religious myself, and I have to agree with everything that Brendan has said here to start off with.
And the reason I said that to clarify is because there's stigma around atheism in some communities, which I do not get personally, because I never had it personally for my family. It might have been in my church, but I just didn't notice it. But that's just me not caring that much about people in the church when I was there. But I never got that sense of feeling of embarrassment or fear around being atheist. Like, it just never was a thing for me. Family never had being religious as a forced condition, and you could just be religious or non-religious as much as you wanted to be, as long as basic morality was upheld, just generally speaking. And that's why I guess for me, I'm not that scared of coming out openly, but I can understand it. For example, if a ex-Muslim person came out, for them it'd be much, much worse.
And for me, my personal experience when it comes to being raised within the faith, the truth of the matter is that I wasn't truly raised within the faith, as a lot of people are. And sorry to steal your thunder here, Brennan. I just suppose that while we had a similar upbringing, I guess one of the personal lessons that stood with me through the test of time is when I was really young. I think my grandmother was like the one in my family who was really the most religious. And she told me basically sort of a juxtaposition. There's always bad and good people. And for her, the best human being that ever lived was Jesus Christ, and the worst human was Hitler. So I really do remember that lesson from an early age. And
But
I definitely,
and sorry about that. The thing is, though, Hitler himself was actually theistic, so that's not really a good comment. I mean, because if you look at it realistically, that comment about Hitler being the antithesis or opposition of religious people is completely wrong. That's been discredited. So I'm not blaming your family for believing that. And I know it's what he said, but just to make it clear, Hitler was not an atheist.
for us, basically, the position is that he's a type of antichrist, regardless of what he actually says and does. So he's basically saying and doing one thing, and in private, he's a totally different person. And I suppose, like, you can see that through his works, objectively speaking. I'd like to continue with the introduction, but I'm sure we'll bring this up later in the debate.
Um, it's fine. Continue.
Oh, okay. I mean, I suppose, obviously, some wisdom is located in all texts within the world. All books provide some knowledge. And I guess one of the things that's really important to me, what I learned from the Bible and essentially apply to everyday scenarios, is if I'm going to judge someone, it's better if I don't judge people, because in the same way how I judge people, I'm also going to be judged. But if I am going to judge someone, the metric I use, the objective standard of judging someone, is their works, essentially. And that's something actually me and Brennan both agree with, regardless of faith, is that essentially we agree in judging people based on their works. And so I guess the example with Hitler, before we move on, is the fact of the matter is that, yes, he could have had faith. I'm not denying that it's a possibility. It's actually a strong possibility, regardless if it's Christian or pantheistic faith. However, that being said, if you strictly judge Hitler from his works, he's one of the worst human beings in all time. No question
In terms
about
of
it.
actions of he did, yes, I agree. In terms of actions, he's one of the most horrible human beings. I absolutely agree. And unlike Stalin, who gets a lot of hate for no good reason, Hitler does deserve all the hate he gets.
Yeah, you can't really mention Hitler and Stalin in the same sentence. I
I,
mean,
I, I, because
Stalin is morally ambiguous. Don't get me wrong. Stalin is morally ambiguous. I don't think like anyone would call him a straight up good guy unless you actually believe in his like theories wholesale. But this is a guy who actually ended the Holocaust, and some other guy started the final solution. It's not really a good comparison to make,
the
even if you
reason
think
I
they
mention
belong
that
to the similar level.
the reason I mention it is because one of these sources that I have in here really does matter, and it matters because it's one of the Catholic sources mentions Stalin and Mao as a reason to debunk atheist myths. Stupid, I know, and it sounds outright stupid.
I mean, at the end of the day, the states get presided over. Yep.
And anyway, debunking that, I'll get to debunking the Catholic Church position on that in a second when I get around to it.
Okay.
Because yeah, let's
Let's
actually
continue.
let's start with the actual definition, shall we?
No worries.
Um, do you have any sources you want to actually directly link? By the way,
I want actually, I'll just state the Orthodox position, plain and simple, really.
no,
Oh,
Mike. Do you have any web pages you want to share at the same time?
it's not exactly an even debate if I don't share anything.
It's
But I'm just happy to wing it if it's okay
it's
with you.
it's honestly fine if you don't. If you do, I'm fine just letting you do it. It's fine.
All good.
Um,
If there's something if I think about something like when I'm trying to explain a point, if I'm trying to like reference text, maybe I'll bring it up. Even I'll just share screen. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's perfectly fine. And anyway, as you know, you trust me to not misrepresent religion in the first place, right?
Of course, you're a genuine actor, and I believe in your honesty. No question about it.
Anyway, let's keep it pot, shall we?
Okay.
Here's the thing: atheism. Atheism itself. Let's make it perfectly clear. It is not necessarily a set of values. It is not about. It is not. It does not have its own independent politics. It does not have its own independent worldview in the actual traditional sense. It does not have a lot of aspects that can be defined as a Unitarian position. Do you agree with that statement?
Yeah, Unitarian, Universalist, synonyms of
Yes.
each other. Hmm.
The only thing that's universal, atheism itself, is this one and the next one afterwards. As you can see here. As it's defined here by this. I'm using this as this one as it's probably one of this one and the following after is probably the best definitions towards it out there, and it gives more nuance and detail than most religious position sites say about atheism. Okay,
Okay.
let's keep on point. It's not a founded position that there's no God and does not answer any other question about what person believes, and that is simply a rejection of the assertion. Atheism is often too defined incorrectly as a belief system. Correct. And yeah, and this is this wordplay. This one. And to go down.
Okay, I have no disagreement about the first paragraph.
Yeah. And this part is really important here. When people talk about atheism itself, stop seeing it as a single entity, as if by taking atheists, like addressing atheists, attacking the atheist position, that means anything. It really doesn't. Because at the end of the day, as I said here, everyone's different. The only common thread that ties all atheists together is the lack of belief in gods.
I kind of feel the same way about religious folk, actually. It's just totally different as well.
In
Just
two,
total denominations in
I'll let
Christianity,
you.
40,000.
Mike, I'll let you get that in 2 seconds. Let me do the next website. Then you can talk about that. Okay.
Well,
There's also this definition. Here we go. Here we go. It is not necessary for an atheist to claim that no gods exist. Nevertheless, some do, and that is absolutely true. You're an atheist if in your actions you live and your principles you live around exist with no belief in a higher power or gods. Do you agree with that statement?
yeah, no question.
And you can always have an atheist or not. You can claim that or not, but if in your own actions you actually are acting in an atheistic manner, you're an atheist, regardless of what you say, basically. I'll get to why that's important in a second. People do call this position hard atheism. No, some do. People often call this position hard atheism. Hard atheism is atheism with the additional conviction that there are no gods anywhere, either inside or outside of the universe. I think that's a good working definition.
Yeah, and I think you can kind of like compare it to hard materialism, I guess, because I mean, soft materialism, I guess historical materialism is soft materialism. Because spirit does exist, like consciousness does affect matter, and
And
consciousness is similar to spirit. Yes,
and
yes.
this is the most important factor here. There's nothing you have to believe in to be an atheist. Not believing in any gods is the only qualification required. And that is the most important part here. And that's where a lot of the apologists get it wrong. When they want to talk about morals to atheists, they're going in the wrong direction completely.
Okay.
Because yes, there might be moral claims in religion, but atheism itself, there is no really set moral claims. For example, there's some people I'll be mentioning in a second who are secular humanists. They are atheists, yes, but they say, but when they define their morality, they say a secular humanist morality, not an atheist morality. It's a clear distinction.
Hmm. Can I actually bring up something? I'm just sort of skipping a little bit. But just 'cause it's really standing out to me. This is an interesting line, and I'm not exactly sure I agree with it.
Which one?
So it's essentially juxtaposing agnosticism and atheism. Well, they're not really juxtaposing, but they're comparing the two.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah. Oh yeah, about that. Okay, how agnosticism and atheism works. Don't I'm not the best person to ask on this because I've never went through the agnostic stage before becoming atheist. But the best way I had it described, simply put, is in this way. The best way it's described has been it's a matter of knowledge, not position of God.
okay,
It's a matter of knowledge. Can you say? And there's also Gnostic and agnostic theism as well. It's basically a case where do you know or do you not know? Can you say with absolute burden of can you say with absolute conviction or proof? It is so, basically.
I just find it odd that I've never really like looked at the word definition of Gnosticism because I understand Gnosticism as a religious and philosophical theory, and I'm actually like very much opposed to that, which is kind of ironic, I know, on some level that I'm sort of anti-Gnosticism, but the fact of the matter is how it defines believers who believe in God and claim to know God exists. Gnostic theists. That's the second paragraph.
Mike, there you go. That's for section.
Exactly. And for me, I just feel like it's sort of weird to call me a gnostic. I just feel like gnostic has such a specific meaning to someone who does legitimately have this position that they do believe in God and claim to know God exists. So I find it sort of interesting that someone's essentially defining my theory, my beliefs, instead of me defining my own theory and beliefs. But I guess we can skip that for the moment because really, I guess I'll just explain Gnosticism by itself, not being a Gnostic theist, as the definition is trying to claim. Gnosticism is basically Satanism, closet Satanism. That's a very controversial opinion, but given the fact that people who do believe in God, generally speaking, think he's the creator of the universe, generally speaking, okay? And Gnosticism kind of flips it on the head because the bad guy in Gnosticism is actually the creator. Keep that in mind. The bad guy is the creator. So when I claim that Gnosticism is effectively closet Satanism, I'm not exactly wrong because you've essentially said that good is evil and evil is good. And I feel like you can actually make the moral claim that the guy who creates the universe must be good in some way
Not
because
necessarily. No,
realistically,
no,
hmm,
not
okay,
necessarily. Because that's a argument. Okay, that's an argument about the morality within religion itself. There's no real, and that's where the thing comes into play here, Mike. The issue is, then I'll just play it through with you. If you want to claim that God has been necessarily good, how can you prove that? And how can you then prove that God being necessarily good is different from God being necessarily selfish or cruel, as in other denominations?
I guess it depends on your point of view. Personally, why is good? Like for me, I sort of like think about it pragmatically. I mean, obviously, the like a lot of people will take offense to the fact that the world was created good in the first case, but that's not really what I'm debating here. I just feel that if nothing was created in the first place, like if we didn't exist, that would actually be a bad thing. And the fact, and for me, experience, consciousness,
Not
all of these things
necessarily.
that make up.
No, not necessarily. If we never came to exist, nothing would change necessarily. Of course, something would change, obviously. But would life still continue to exist? Of course. If humans never came about and humans got extinct, would Earth still be fine as is? Yes, because the Earth would just live on.
I kind of think they're inseparable in the sense that the world would need to end for humans to end. I mean, that's not necessarily the case, but it would appear to be that case given how stubborn humanity actually is. So sorry, I
In the
kind of like
yeah,
brought up a strong opinion.
sure. In the case of what we're currently doing, yes, I know. But the point is about if humans weren't here and vanished. Like, let's say that when we were first around in small numbers, let's say we completely failed to evolve. Let's say we completely failed to thrive and prosper. Would the Earth still be here? Would much of the Earth's world still be here? Yes. So, in many ways, people need to understand we are just another species on this planet. Us being around does not ensure anything about the Earth's future. The Earth itself will die eventually itself naturally. We cannot stop that. We cannot stop what the Earth does. We cannot stop what the solar system does. We cannot stop what happens when the sun dies, for example.
Hmm. I'm actually interested. I was looking up today. I'll just say one more thing before we carry on. I was actually interested in that idea you spoke about just now, which is that how humans essentially needed to evolve, technologically speaking, to an industrial civilization in order to have a chance of actually wiping out each other. Because in a lot of these tribal societies, they were just playing at war, but they never actually experienced total war. And that's something that only really came about as a concept in the 20th century.
The thing is, that technology, we need a technology to even hunt other species and get more power in terms of other species. Because humans, we have a significant disadvantage, as I'm sure people who know biology knows very well. Our disadvantage is our actual physical strength by itself is piss weak.
In
We
terms of pound for pound strength,
yes,
100%. Because,
correct.
well, it's only what, 3 times? You can lift as much as your body, I mean, at max,
And
theoretically.
and the thing is, that's completely fine. And as I'm saying, humans, ever since the beginning, needed to advance in technology to even stand a chance in life. We cannot fight one on one with just our innate nature. We always needed to use other things surrounding us to balance the scales. All that happened in the Industrial Revolution is human evolution got too bad in its implications. And ever since the 1800s, that's where our crisis is now showing. The Industrial Revolution drastically increased the amount of resources we were using for civilization. The wars increased in massive scale during the Industrial Revolution. Everything increased in scale. Carbon emissions going up. The ozone layer destruction increased. Casualties in war, birth rates as well as everything else. Inequality also increased as well. It's like, so it's more a case that we always needed to get a lot of technology to balance the scales against us and nature. It's just the case that now, in today's age, we've just done too much damage in that development of technology to the planet itself that it's now backfiring on us badly.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and I've actually argued with some accelerationists about this, and they always call you a Luddite if you try and criticize people for being over reliant on technology. But surprisingly, there must be some universal truth to this, because obviously we agree on this despite having different worldviews to some extent. The Orthodox Church, Ted Kaczynski, a whole bunch of people actually believe this. But they're not Luddites. We just want to merely restrict technology to the extent to which we're dependent on it. We just don't want to become over dependent on it. And we see the
I,
issues today with
I,
phone addiction.
because the thing is, technology itself, just to be clear, I'm not against technology. I just am against technology which is going too far or is exploitative. For example, AI, right? I think can exist. AI should exist to some extent, but for example, there's actually a really good phone, a really good translation phone that's being made in China. It's really kind of cool. Um, because in China they're making a very advanced phone, which is run by AI, and it's basically a super accurate auto translator phone.
Amazing. It's good to hear.
And that's what I'm saying. Something like that is good. If we use AI for that sort of purposes to basically destroy the language barrier in humanity, absolutely, go ahead. But if we want to use AI, but if we want to use AI to destroy workplaces, destroy labor rights, and basically have it as a reason for companies to basically abandon conventional work, making more instability, that's not okay.
Yeah, the act of creation itself is actually a marvelous thing because obviously everything's out there for us to play with essentially. It's like a sandbox in a video game. But the thing is when we sort of abuse that act of creation and we actually cause a lot more destructive consequences with what we've created, i.e., nuclear bombs and whatnot, then that's really becoming an issue for humanity's survival. Anyhow, I digress. Let's move on.
And your point, let's see, which one is this? Oh yeah, other variants here. This one I think you might be knowledgeable about, given you being more in a religious background. This one.
Okay.
First things first, were you ever around the wording of militant atheism?
To be fair, militant atheism, that sort of rings a bell in regards to
The reason
Joseph Stalin and the USSR.
the reason I'm mentioning it is because this is a line of argumentation which has been used by a lot of evangelical people.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this clearly right now. Militant atheism itself, I think, is a complete farce. I'll say what I think it actually is, and it's just they use militant atheism. And what I think it actually is more so will sound equally as offensive and insulting to religious people, but it's much more accurate and less dehumanizing. But the point is, militant atheism, yeah. That's fine. That's fine. When what time was out, I'll wait out the time and then we link. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
I was saying militant atheism. What I think it is more, I think it's more this. No. Where's it? No, not this one. God. Militant atheism difference. Here we go. I think what they're referring to more so is anti-theism.
Makes sense to me.
Anti-theism itself. First things first, do you know what anti-theism is?
It's generally someone who, if they're in power, they'll crack down on religion. Now, anti-theism
No,
would
no, no, no,
probably
no, 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 no. Incorrect. That's not what it actually is.
Okay.
Try again. Let's try again, and it's not necessarily pushing for a crackdown on religion. It's a philosophical standpoint.
So basically, they're trying to say that it's irrational to believe in God. That's actually, they're trying to disprove the existence of the creator. Is that
Not
more
necessarily,
along the lines?
not
No.
necessarily,
Oh.
not necessarily disprove. It's more of a case that anti-theism talks more about the community itself. Basically, atheism itself is not a belief in a deity or higher power, correct? But the difference is, anti-theism is just clearly a distinction in which atheists themselves might keep to themselves and mind their own business, right? And that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But different anti-theists and atheists, and this is where the line can cross between atheism and anti-theism, is anti-theism talks about society itself. Basically, the whole point of anti-theism is to sever the religious institution and religious power from society.
But the way how you describe it, it's almost, dare I say, related to secularism, or it's even going even
It's
further
not
with secularism.
not necessarily. Oh, not necessarily, and I'll get into it later why when there's more time. Secularism, because secularism itself depends on which variant of secularism are you talking about? Are you talking about hard, soft, or really rogue variants of secularism?
Definitely the hard variant.
Okay, if you're talking about a hard variant, aspects of anti-theism is in that correct. But also you have to understand, and this is just a caution, not just you, but for anyone, basically. When you think the word secularism, if it's a case where there's a focus to separate church from state in basically everything, yes, I guess some aspects of that can be applied. But soft secularism is more about cooperation with religions. And there's even some really weird other forms of secularism in which it's basic in which basically it is used to make sure that dominant religions don't actually kill or destroy or exterminate minor religions. And that's not necessarily promoting separation of powers, even. Just making sure that a majority religion government cannot have absolute power to just impose a religious law.
And that's all like all good and well, I guess. I mean, in some way, I am opposed to secularism. Not in principle, not based on my principles, but if you actually allow for the fact that a monarch is someone who's actually chosen effectively, they have a divine mandate essentially, and it's like if you support a mandate who actually who is a theocrat at the same time, or they work with the church, then you are opposed to secularism. And in some way, I admire the monarchs because they provide long-term stability. And I think that's actually really incredible for human civilization. Yeah, human civilizations, they come and go. But when we really spread out, when civilizations end, there's less impact throughout the years, throughout human history, when civilizations end after hundreds or thousands of years. And that for me is probably one of the things about democracy. I guess secularism is a democratic ideology.
Yes and no.
Hmm.
Yes and no. I would say in America's case, it's definitely not that at all. For example, in America, if you actually are atheistic or just not generally not committed to religion, the likelihood that you'll get any state power or even be in the or become president goes down drastically to zero.
Yeah, and in the American example is a thing where essentially they're going, as you said, for soft secularism, is that they're basically trying to balance all these competing ideologies, all these competing religions. And yeah, you basically have to believe in something, I would say. Definitely increases your chances with the masses, basically, for them voting for you. In the same way that they prefer, in spite of the push for diversity, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if the best candidate gets selected for the role, in spite of that, it's definitely 100% traditional family values, at least on paper. I mean, Biden's a weird example because, like, if someone asked me how many Catholic presidents have there been in the United States, I'd say there's only been one, Kennedy. But of course, Biden says he's Catholic, and a lot of people do believe he's Catholic.
Biden says he's technically Catholic, so to say he's Catholic for the sake of it, because let's not go into who is or isn't religious. Yeah.
No worries.
That's a futile argument in which we'll never get any conclusion.
It kind of goes back to my original point, where I was just saying how you judge people based on works, and in some cases, it's really hard to judge someone, genuinely speaking, because obviously you can't just go into their mind and see what they're thinking at any given point. Can't just read people's heads. But I guess it's like when you are so flagrantly going opposed to principles you claim to be espousing, then it's going beyond mere hypocrisy at that stage. It's going beyond the fact that you're judging people in a different way to how you judge yourself. It's just you're clearly lying. You're clearly something else than what you're saying you are.